What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to Trump's new Ukraine peace plan. So, today I want to check out this video by TLDR News. And this is going to go over exactly what happened on Monday at the White House. A lot of world leaders were there, and Zelensky was there. And this was his first time back at the White House since the crazy, embarrassing incident last time where basically Trump and Vance ganged up on him and had him kicked out of the White House. So he's back, but I have to admit I am a bit skeptical to hear what this grand peace plan is gonna look like. You know, when Trump was running for president, he basically promised that if he was elected again, he would end the Russia-Ukraine war in one day, which obviously never happened. So I don't know, but I am very curious to hear what happened with this Ukraine peace plan.
On Monday, a high-profile European delegation met with Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House for talks about a peace deal in Ukraine.
Yeah.
This followed Trump's meeting with Putin in Alaska last Friday.
That's right. This was very controversial. You know, I don't know what the rest of the world thought about this, but this was fairly controversial here in the United States. Putin meeting with Donald Trump here in the United States, but at the same time, I got to admit, in order for something to happen here, for some kind of resolution to be created with the Russia-Ukraine war, somebody has to talk to Putin, and Trump did it, and seemingly it went okay. I don't know a ton of details about it, but now Trump is obviously talking to Zelensky as well, so you know, maybe something's going to happen. We're headed in that direction, or at least the beginnings of it. Maybe, I don't know. I'm desperately trying to remain optimistic about this.
After which, Trump ditched the idea of a ceasefire, suggested that Zelensky could end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, and echoed Putin's opposition to Ukraine joining NATO.
Oh my God. See, it's so frustrating because Trump will randomly do things like talk to Putin and talk to Zelensky and make it seem like he's doing something reasonable, maybe. And then, like, says stuff like this while it's going on. Like, Zelensky could end the war immediately if he wants to? That is so outrageously out of touch and disrespectful. Like, to say that's basically saying that Ukraine has the power right now to end the war. Yeah, okay, sure. If they, if Ukraine, like, right now agreed to give up, like, 50% of Ukraine, I'm sure the war would end. Yeah, but at what cost? So, it's just very, like, disrespectful to say Zelensky and Ukrainians are... So he is implying that they are actively, like, trying to make the war continue because they could just end it if they wanted to. It's really a stupid thing to say.
However, Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, also said that Russia had agreed to let the US and Europe effectively offer Article 5-like language to cover a security guarantee. In other words, allow the US to participate in a peacekeeping effort, which is something Europe has been pushing for months.
Putin said this? Hold on.
To cover agreed to let the US and Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff also said that Russia had agreed to let the US and Europe effectively offer Article 5-like.
Russia? This is so weird to me. Russia agreed to let the United States and Europe do a peacekeeping operations in Ukraine? Like, why? That's just a weird thing since Russia is the country actively bombing and attacking and killing people in Ukraine. That's just a weird thing for them to be like, yeah, if you want to start like a peacekeeping operation to keep the peace from us who are doing it. You know what I mean? That's very weird to me.
So in this video, we'll recap the previous US and European peace plans, what's changed in Trump's latest proposal, and what we should watch going forward.
Okay, very interesting. I always appreciate these recaps of like the world events going on because like a lot of Americans, there's a lot of this stuff that I really just don't know about or don't hear about. So this is why TLDR News EU, really, really great channel.
Let's start by recapping the progress so far. Back in February, Trump indicated that the US may not commit to a security guarantee for Ukraine, causing alarm in Europe.
That's right. That's right. That's freaking right. Oh my God. So much crazy stuff has happened this year. It's almost hard to keep track of. Like how many times the United States has flip-flopped on this.
He invited Zelensky to Washington, D.C. to sign a deal that would have granted the US access to Ukrainian mineral resources,
right,
oil and gas, without a US security guarantee in return. This meeting descended into an ugly confrontation, with Trump accusing Zelensky of being ungrateful for US support and gambling with World War III.
Yep.
European leaders.
Yeah, I think we all remember that. Okay.
Leaders were horrified and met in London for emergency talks, which produced the idea of a coalition of the willing.
Thank God that like somehow has blown over. I think just because, Zelensky at the end of the day wants to do what is best for Ukraine, bless him. He's willing to like put up with Donald Trump, kind of just because he has to. So that's great that he was like able to come back to the White House and have these discussions. That's awesome.
This is a multinational security backstop for Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire or peace deal, which would involve peacekeeping troops stationed on the ground in Ukraine, fighter jets patrolling the skies, naval vessels clearing landmines in the Black Sea, and potentially military experts and engineers being sent to Ukraine.
Okay.
In the meantime, a 30-day ceasefire proposal tabled by the US in March failed after Russia watered it down from a full ceasefire to a ceasefire limited to energy infrastructure and the Black Sea. And then both sides accused the other of breaching it. In May and
Yeah. That's why this is like so tricky, because it feels like, man, this war has been going on for a long time now. Here in the United States, we definitely, to be honest, we definitely feel like we are really, really, really far away from it all. So I think it's easy for a lot of Americans to have a big sense of detachment from the whole thing and how important it is. And how much it affects us in the world, because we're so far away from it. And over time, the discussion and the public sentiments, people have just stopped caring as much, which is a really sad thing to say, but I do think that's true, at least here in the United States. Okay, let's get. It's nice that they're doing this little recap, because so much has happened, like just in the last year.
In June, Russia and Ukraine held several rounds of direct peace talks in Istanbul, which led to an agreed prisoner exchange, but failed to lead to a peace deal. Then, last Friday, Trump warmly hosted Putin in Alaska.
Yeah.
He spoke of their fantastic relationship and giving their meeting 10 out of 10 in a Fox News interview.
Oh my God. He just, like, this is the thing about Trump. It's like, maybe he's, for this time, maybe he's trying to do something good and talk to Putin about peace between Russia and Ukraine. But he has to sour the whole thing by making it weird. Why does he have to be so weird about it all and be like, oh yeah, Putin, he's such a great guy. We're best friends. We had a 10 out of 10 meeting. Love the guy. Maybe I'll go to Russia next time. It's like, chill. Like, yes, you're going to have to like be friendly with him to get him to do anything. Okay, I get that. But I think most people will agree Trump has just been too friendly to Russia and Putin. And it took a very, very long time for him to say anything critical about what Russia has done to Ukraine. It took a long time. So yeah, like, I'm glad we're talking to Putin because I think inevitably that's the pathway to peace, right? But don't be so weird about it. Like, Trump has to be so weird about it and kind of insensitive.
And claiming that they were pretty close to a deal on Ukraine.
Also, don't say things like that if you're not sure. Don't just say stuff to look good. Trump does that all the time. Just says stuff. It doesn't even have to be true. Like, oh, I met with Putin and it sounds like we're really close to a deal. Don't say that if that's not true, if it's not actually going to happen.
However, no ceasefire or sanctions were announced, and Trump endorsed Putin's long-standing call for a direct peace agreement without a ceasefire. A delegation of...
Huh? How? You know, I don't know everything about the war and conflict and negotiations, but how do you call for peace without a ceasefire? Why? What? If you're calling for peace but you don't want a ceasefire, does that mean you want to... That heavily implies that you want to do something like evil. You want, you know? Peace and ceasefire kind of go hand in hand. What? What is that? What's up with that?
European leaders then travelled to Washington, D.C. to push back and gain clarity on the US's position.
That's really cool that all these European leaders also traveled together to the White House to do this meeting. That's really awesome. I am sure most European leaders do not want to interact with Donald Trump. I'm sure they don't want to have to put up with him, but for the greater good and for the good of Ukraine, all these world leaders and Zelensky came to the White House to have this meeting. That's really awesome, and I know that took some effort.
But what's changed in Trump's peace plan since the Alaska summit? Well,
Okay.
as we see it, there were at least 3 notable shifts. Firstly, the US dropping a ceasefire. Secondly, the US's apparent openness to offering a security guarantee for Ukraine.
Okay.
And thirdly, the proposal of land swaps.
Oh boy. Oh geez. See, that's what makes me wonder if this is actually going to happen. So the United States is openly saying we might offer security guarantees, which is great and a big deterrent, I'm sure, for Russia. And it's more clarity on where the United States stands, which is good. Proposal of land swaps, geez. I don't think anyone really knows how this is going to end, but that's a really sad outcome. If Ukraine has to give up some of its territory to Russia, this war will then have been Russia invaded Ukraine, took a large part of Ukraine's territory for itself, and that's the end of it. They took over part of Ukraine. That would be the story of the war, which is really sad.
Trump's ditching of a ceasefire is the bit that's worried Europe most. Until just several weeks
Yeah.
before the Alaska summit, Trump had repeated his demand for a ceasefire. and in May even threatened further sanctions if it wasn't respected.
Yeah.
But on Saturday, after meeting Putin, Trump posted on Truth Social saying the best solution was, quote, to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, and not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes do not hold up.
I don't know. Is that true? Like, you can't... Negotiating a ceasefire would be a waste of time? Is that what we're saying? Because we should just be negotiating a peace agreement, not even starting with a ceasefire, but a full-blown peace agreement? Is that reasonable? Maybe.
This aligned with Putin's position, as there's little incentive for Putin to agree to a ceasefire while Russia maintains the upper hand on the battlefield. And
Maybe he just thinks there is never going to be... Like, obviously we want a ceasefire. Like, everybody wants a ceasefire. But I see, like, the argument that maybe it's just not worth going through another year of negotiating over a ceasefire when you could spend that year negotiating, well, hopefully a lot shorter than a year. Like, hopefully just going straight to full-blown peace. I get it.
Trump also repeated Putin's other arguments, ruling out Ukraine joining NATO and emphasizing that there's no chance of returning Crimea. At the talks on Monday, European leaders, who fear that aiming for a full deal without a ceasefire would allow Russia to maintain pressure on Ukraine's front line and ultimately advance further, reiterated the need for a ceasefire, with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz saying, "I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire."
I see. That makes sense. All right. I see both sides of the argument, but it like, if you're thinking in real practical reality, people are dying, like, all the time in Ukraine. And in order for, like, peace talks between Zelensky and Putin to even be productive, it needs to be, like, during a ceasefire. It needs to be a show of good faith that reasonable discussions and reasonable deals can be made. And I get it.
So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia. European leaders are reportedly hoping to push talks in a direction that Putin will be forced to reject, thereby annoying Trump and raising the possibility of stronger US sanctions.
Yeah, it's weird that the United States has, it's like we are an ally with Ukraine, but we're not committing all the way. We're just, like, kind of committing, which is a weird place to be. And it's like, anytime Russia does something, the United States will be like, well, if you do more, then we're going to be real mad. Then we're going to put sanctions on you. Okay, it's okay if you kind of invade Ukraine and you kill a bunch of Ukrainian people and bomb buildings. You know, if you kind of do it a little, okay, but if you do any more, then you're gonna be sorry. Then we're gonna, it's like, what? Like, how much more does Russia need to do to show, like, that the United States just needs to, show our support and, like, do what, I guess I'm just kind of sick of the threats of sanctions and action. It's been years now with just like, well, if Russia takes it any further, they literally have killed people and bombed cities and buildings. And, like, what do you mean if they take it further?
In more optimistic news for Ukraine, though, the US now appears keen to offer Ukraine a security guarantee similar to NATO's Article 5 Mutual Defense Clause.
That's good.
Something Putin reportedly agreed to in Alaska.
What? That's so weird. What do you mean? Putin agreed to the United States defending Ukraine? That doesn't even... We're defending it from Putin, from Russia. What do you mean he's okay with it? That doesn't even make sense to me.
The European delegation on Monday aimed to push Trump for further details. And although Trump didn't make any specific promises, he didn't rule out putting American forces in Ukraine either.
Wow. See, that, if I'm talking about, like, big statements and actual action, that would be it. U.S. military in Ukraine.
His Oval Office meeting with Zelensky, we will give them very good protection. This marks a notable shift from their meeting in February,
Okay.
when Trump refused to offer any US security guarantee for Ukraine,
Yeah.
though it's still unclear what the US will commit to.
Yeah, the rhetoric is different. Trump is talking a bigger game. He's saying that he's going to commit U.S. security guarantees, although it sounds like we haven't done it yet, and we've said this before, but so action speaks louder than words, but it's the words are better, I guess.
The next part of Trump's new peace plan is the idea of land swaps. This would likely involve asking Ukraine to give up territory in the Donbass, which comprises the Donetsk and Luhansk region, as per Putin's demand, while Russia will freeze the rest of the front line in return. But Zelensky is obviously likely to resist any territorial concessions.
Of course. Rightfully so. If that's part of Ukraine. Again, that would literally just be what Russia wants, which is a really sad thought, I guess. Giving Russia what Russia wants and basically saying, okay, if Russia goes to war against a country and marches into their territory and takes it and drags it out long enough, they can take territory from a sovereign nation. That's not a good feeling.
Especially if land Russia doesn't already control, as it would validate Putin's invasion and encourage him to push further into Ukraine.
Yeah.
And while US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Russia might also have to give up some territory in Ukraine, there were concerns that if Ukraine were to cede its so-called fortress belt in the Donbass, it could just be used by Russia as a launchpad for further aggression.
Of course. That's just adding on to what I'm kind of afraid of. If you agree to concede part of Ukraine to Russia, it's setting a really bad precedent.
So, what's likely to happen next? Well, there's now talk of arranging a bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky.
Okay.
Which would be the first time the two leaders have met since Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022.
That's progress. That's something. That is something. That's like the biggest news, I think, of this whole video. Just the idea that there might be a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. That's pretty huge.
Followed by a trilateral meeting involving Trump.
Oh, God.
During the summit on Monday,
God.
Trump claimed that Putin, quote, wants to make a deal for me, and later said on Truth Social that he'd called Putin to begin organizing talks.
Oh, my God. This is just so scary. It's so scary that it's good that the meeting between Zelensky and Putin is being arranged. That had to happen sometime. But it's all being facilitated by Donald Trump, the most unpredictable world leader. And maybe it'll go great. Maybe it'll be another Zelensky kicked out of the White House debacle. Like, who knows what'll happen? That's the scary part.
In response, a Kremlin spokesperson said that it was worthwhile to explore the possibility of raising the level of representatives from the Russian and Ukrainian delegations in negotiations.
Okay.
The other thing to watch is whether Ukraine will hold elections in the next few months, which Russia would almost certainly try to influence. For context, there were rumours of possible elections in Ukraine around April, after Zelensky reportedly held a meeting telling his team to be ready for a vote after a potential ceasefire. In March, the leader of Ukraine's largest opposition party, Petro Poroshenko, predicted that elections could happen any time from August to October,
Wow.
but also argues that they shouldn't take place until peace has been established.
That makes sense. I think that makes sense. Like, no need to throw that complication into all of this when so much hangs in the balance, like complicating the situation by switching Ukraine's leader in the middle of all this. It's not. I agree, that's probably not good.
When asked by a reporter in the Oval Office whether he'd hold elections, Zelensky said yes, in safe circumstances.
Okay.
Zelensky likely knows that any election after a peace deal would act as a referendum on his leadership and the terms of whatever deal he strikes.
True.
It's safe to say that
Okay. I think that's the end. Yes, that's the end of the video. That was really interesting and kind of terrifying, but also, it's just like, I think everyone's probably feeling pretty nervous because it's kind of exciting that so much is actually happening. It's finally happening. The world leaders got together. Zelensky might talk to Putin in a meeting one-on-one. But then the Trump factor of the unpredictability, you never know what he's going to do or say or think. And this is some of the highest stakes and consequences, and so it's exciting and terrifying. That's where we're at right now, and we're going to see. Things seem to be moving pretty quickly, so it's going to be fascinating to see what happens next. And I hope the best for Ukraine, obviously, and the world. So anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on Trump's Ukraine peace plan, Russia-Ukraine, and the situation happening now. That'd be cool to hear about, especially from people outside of the United States. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.